Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Thira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe Jayo Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jaya Shubhadra Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. So we'll continue with reading from Srila Prabhupada Lila Amrita with the chapter titled The Land is Yours. The Krishna consciousness movement is the topmost yoga system. It is very scientific. Don't think it is a sentimental movement. It is authorized, supported by the Vedic literatures, and actually it is becoming effective. Religion is surrender to God. These boys and girls have taken to this real religion. This movement is so important, and we're giving everyone a chance to make this life successful. Therefore, our humble request is that you take to Krishna consciousness. On the fifth evening after Justice Mishra had referred to religion in his introduction, Srila Prabhupada defined the word in his lecture. Religion means constitutional position. In English dictionary, religion is described as faith, but by Vedic definition, religion cannot be changed like faith because it is the law given by the Lord. Only surrender unto the lotus feet of Krishna is dharma. That is Krishna's verdict. One should not have any ulterior motive in approaching God. Why not surrender immediately? Be intelligent. Real religion means to surrender immediately. Why should you wait for many, many births? We request all of you to try to understand this process of Krishna consciousness very seriously. Take to it and you will become happy. Srila Prabhupada saw the Indian people abandoning their dharma for materialism, and he spoke strongly, pointing out their great mistake and urging them to rectify it. If you actually want to advance your nation, India, then you must take to the culture of Krishna consciousness. This will glorify your country. You cannot compete with the Western world in the field of technology. It is impossible. The Western countries are meant for that purpose, for advancing technology, but you're meant for a different purpose. Your special advantage is that you have been born in this land of Bharatvarsh after many, many births and after performing many pious activities. India is very poverty-stricken, so wherever I go, I am told I come from a very poor country. India advertises this image. Our ministers beg from other countries. We are accepted as a beggar's culture. At the Berkeley University, one Indian student protested the studying of the Hare Krishna movement. He was the only student to protest. He said, Swamiji, what benefit is made by accepting this Hare Krishna movement? He was the only student to protest. He said, Swamiji, in another place, a girl asked me, Swamiji, what is God? So I asked her, are you Indian? You should be ashamed of being called an Indian because you ask, what is God? Although you come from India, the land of God. India is the land where Lord Krishna appeared. So although you may be born Indian, if you have no dharma, what is the difference between you and the animals? One night, while Prabhupada was speaking, an American hippie in the audience approached the stage. He had long, wild, blonde hair and wore a vest and high leather boots. A miniature framed picture of Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva hung on a chain around his neck. When the boy tried to climb up on the stage, some of the devotees pushed him back, but Srila Prabhupada intervened. He had a devotee bring a cushion and place a microphone in front of the boy. Then Srila Prabhupada said, Yes? Have you realized yourself? The young man demanded. Have you realized the soul in the innermost depths of your being? Yes, Srila Prabhupada replied. At first, the man was taken aback, but then he again challenged. Now you tell me another thing. When was the Bhagavad Gita written? Now you answer my question, Srila Prabhupada said. What is the process of receiving knowledge from the Bhagavad Gita? No, the young man retorted. You tell me. When was the Bhagavad Gita written? In your lecture, you said 5,000 years ago, but according to other Swamis, it was only written 1,500 years ago. Answer my question I asked you first. Srila Prabhupada raised his voice angrily. I am not your servant. I am Krishna's servant. You must answer my question. A heated argument began with the hippie yelling at Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada arguing back. Finally, the devotees removed the boy from the stage. This incident confused the audience. Many people began to leave. Why did your Guru Maharaj become angry? Some of them demanded from the devotees. He should have answered the man's question. Some of the civic leaders supporting the Pandal program also became upset, fearing Srila Prabhupada had made an unfavorable impression on the public. Those who were devotional, however, remained in their seats to hear further what Prabhupada had to say. To the devotees, it was inconceivable. Why had Prabhupada, in the middle of his talk, invited a crazy hippie onto the stage, given him a microphone and a seat, and then argued with him to the point of yelling and shouting, and all before an audience of 20,000? Bhavananda, one man who had helped organize the Pandal program, Pandal protested, Oh, Swamiji has gotten angry. This is not good. But Srila Prabhupada seemed to have done it purposefully. He had spoken for a long time that evening on how to understand the Bhagavad Gita, and then he had this hippie brought on the stage. It was bewildering to us. We couldn't figure it out. Giriraja. Srila Prabhupada was actually using this entire incident to illustrate the process of understanding Bhagavad Gita. After the man left, Prabhupada completed his lecture by stating that one must approach Krishna or Krishna's representative with a submissive attitude, by serving and inquiring, not simply asking challenging questions. The whole incident had illustrated this point. Yadubara. Many in the audience misunderstood the incident. It caused a split, but those who understood what Srila Prabhupada had done could see that this hippie was a rascal, and this had been a time for transcendental anger against his nonsensical options. After everything was over, Prabhupada told us, just as the gopis were lusty for Krishna, Arjuna would also get angry for Krishna. So it is not bad that a devotee becomes angry for Krishna. But many people in the crowd could not understand this point, how a devotee is not impersonal. The Indians are used to seeing impersonalist yogis who express no emotion. The audience was mostly impersonalist. The last night of the Pandal program, Srila Prabhupada spoke privately with James George, the Canadian High Commissioner. Mr. George, you've attracted so many Canadians and Americans. Prabhupada, I have not attracted them. Krishna has attracted them. Mr. George, true. Prabhupada, Krishna is all attractive. I'm simply presenting the means of being attracted. That is my business. It is similar to the way a magnet attracts iron. If the iron is rusty, however, then magnetic force cannot attract. Therefore, my business is to remove the dirt. This process is Cheto Darpana Marjanam, cleansing the heart. At the present moment, every one of us in a consciousness of thinking, I am this body. Because you were born in Canada, you're thinking you're Canadian. Because I was born in India, I'm thinking I'm Indian. And because he was born in America, he is thinking he is American. None of us are American, Canadian, or Indian. We're living entities. Mr. George, I have no problem following all of that. How, though, is this change of consciousness to be brought about? For example, in the West. This, I take it, is your mission. Prabhupada, there's no question of East and West. It is philosophy, it is science. In mathematics, for instance, 2 plus 2 equals 4. This is equally understandable in the West as well as the East. It is not that 2 plus 2 in the West is 5 and 2 plus 2 in the West is 3. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 everywhere. The first knowledge, then, that must be understood by human society is that we are not these bodies. It is very common knowledge. From this point, our spiritual knowledge can advance. If we do not know what spirit is, then what is the question of advancing in spiritual knowledge? After their conversation, Mr. George accompanied Prabhupada to the stage and introduced him to the crowd. For several years, I've been wanting to meet this Swami and see what it was about him that was affecting so many of our young people in Canada and North America. I was very happy this evening to come in response to your kind invitation, and especially to meet Swamiji. I think, as he himself said to me a short time ago, there is something really happening. Whether he is doing it or it is being done through him, as he said, it is beside the point. But there is something happening, and everyone who doubts that should be here tonight to see this. It is happening not only here in Delhi, but it's happening in Toronto and Cleveland and Los Angeles and New York and all sorts of places. What is it? I don't know. What is it? I don't know how he would answer that question. For me, at a deeper level, what is happening is the awakening of a search. In his lecture, Srila Prabhupada compared the material body to a machine operated by a driver, the soul, and he spoke of the soul's natural position as servant of Krishna. Addressing Mr. George, Prabhupada concluded his speech. Here, our Honorable High Commissioner of Canada is present. I request that since you have come to our country, please try to understand this philosophy. I've traveled in your country, in Canada also, and as you have already mentioned, we've got 5 branches in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, Hamilton, and Ottawa. So the boys are struggling, they're distributing culture, these books, and I'm getting very encouraging reports. Many young men are also coming. It is a very scientific movement, so I request you to inform your government to give these boys facility to inject this Krishna consciousness movement in your country. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. So, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And just moving on to the verse. So it's the Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-13. Um, Harihi Sakshad Bhagavan Sharirinam Atmajasanam Ivatoyam Ipsitam Hitvamaham Stam Yadi Sajate Grihe Tad Mahatvam Vayasadamapatinam. Would anyone else also like to read the verse, please?
Hare Krishna, I am trying.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Mataji.
Harihi Sakshat Bhagavan Sharirina Matma Rishanamivo Toyomi Bipsitam Hitva Mohangstam Yadi Sajjate Grihe Tada Mahattang Vayasa Dampotinam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Vita.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Haririhi Sakshat Bhagavan Sharirinaam Atma Jahasanamativa Toyam Ipshitam Hitva Mahamstam Yadi Sajjate Grehe Tad Mahatvam Vyasadam Patinam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, can I try, Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yes, please.
Hare Sakshat Bhagavan Saririnam Atma Jasanam Nivatoyamipshitam Hitva Mahamstam Yadi Sajate Grihe Tada Mahatvam Vayasadam Patiknam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So we'll move on to word by word. Hari, the Lord. He, suddenly. Sakshat, directly. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sharirinam, of all living entities who have accepted material bodies, Atma, the life, and Chasanam of the aquatics. Iva, like, Toyam, the vast water, Ipsitam is desired, Hitva, giving, Mahan, a great personality, Tam, him, Yadi, if, Sajate becomes attached, Grihe, to household uh, life, Tada, at that time, Mahatvam, greatness, Vayasa, by age, Dampatinam, of the husband and wife, and translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Just as aquatics always desire to remain in the vast mass of water, all conditioned living entities naturally desire to remain in the vast existence of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, if someone very great by material calculations fails to take shelter of the Supreme Soul, but instead becomes attached to material household life, his greatness is like that of a young low-class couple. One who is too attached to material life loses all good spiritual qualities. Puppet, all the crocodiles are very fierce animals. They are powerless when they venture out of the water onto land. When they're out of the water, they cannot exhibit their original power. Similarly, the all-pervading Supreme Soul, Paramatma, is the source of all living entities, and all living entities are part and parcel of him. When the living entity remains in contact with the all-pervading Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, he manifests his spiritual power, exactly as a crocodile exhibits its strength in the water. In other words, the greatness of the living entity can be perceived when he is in the spiritual world, engaged in spiritual activities. Many householders, although well educated in the knowledge of the Vedas, become attached to family life. They're compared herein to crocodiles out of the water, for they are devoid of all spiritual strength. Their greatness is like that of a young husband and wife, who, though uneducated, praise one another and become attracted to their own temporary beauty. This kind of greatness is appreciated only by low-class men with no qualifications. Everyone should therefore seek the shelter of the Supreme Soul, the source of all living entities. No one should waste his time in the so-called happiness of materialistic household life. In the Vedic civilization, this type of crippled life is allowed only until one's 50th year, when one must give up family life and enter either the order of Vanaprasth, independent retired life or cultivation of spiritual knowledge, or sannyasa, the renounced order in which one completely takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Shrinvadam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanam Hridyantastohi Abhadrani Vidunoti Suratsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I'm just going to reshare my screen again. So for this verse, 5:18-13, the central theme of this verse is the source of power, along with attachment. And this analogy of the crocodile out of the water is basically used again and again by Srila Prabhupada to explain the difference between the material strength and the spiritual strength. And if we break these three into each of the elements, is the aquatic. So in that order, the elephant is the king. Sorry, the crocodile is the king. And even an elephant cannot easily defeat a crocodile in the river, because in the river or in that water, the crocodile's power is natural, inherited, formidable. Then the next is the land. So when the same crocodile, when it's dragged onto the land, it becomes helpless. Like if a child could come and poke it with a stick, or or even like as it says here, a small dog could harass it. So it may have the same body, but because it's out of its natural element, it's powerless. So using this metaphor for our life, our water and is as this verse said, uh-oh, uh, is in the shelter of the Supreme Soul, and the land is being attached. And when we are situated in this water in the shelter of the Supreme Soul, in the shelter of in Krishna consciousness, we possess spiritual strength, character, peace, and seeking shelter in this dry land of materialism, it's losing our vital force and basically in the same situation as getting poked and prodded, just like that same crocodile does. Another note that this verse had was what I guess greatness is. And this verse challenges that definition of success. So, material greatness, how it's usually judged by education, wealth, social standing, good family life. But according to this verse, if a great person is attached only to household life, the gray hair, and ignores the supreme soul, then this greatness is only superficial. Um, and this has been compared to that of a young low-class couple who may be infatuated with each other's temporary beauty and praise one another, but in the lens of the Vedas, they're simply wasting time in a crippled state of life. And why do we stay on dry land even when we're suffering? Because of this sense of false security. We think our family bank balance and social status is what will protect us. So regarding this verse, I was reading the transcription of a lecture, and that mentioned the seven faults of material pleasure. And just as I was reading this, I was also simultaneously reading this book on Rumi. He's a poet. And it was basically a way of the author's way of healing through poetry. And this book mentioned 10 diagnoses that are 10 diseases that humans are afflicted with, and I guess a prescription for each. And just as I was reading the book and this verse, I was sort of thinking how both of them are related. So the intention of bringing that in, it's not to override any Shastra, but basically bringing in a mirror for modern minds to understand what the Shastra already says through this lens of poetry. So with attachment being the central figure, as human beings, we are diagnosed with various diseases, and the root cause of each of these is attachment. And these seven flaws of material pleasure, these material diseases, is all of these have a prescription. So from this lecture, the first one was alpatra, triviality. And that's basically how this pleasure of material life is minuscule compared to the infinite capacity of the soul to experience bliss. And these material pleasures, they are like the single drop of water in a vast desert, and they don't move the needle or the compass of the internal satisfaction. So from this Rumi book, the poetry was quit being a drop, make yourself an ocean. And when when the because it's only a drop of happiness that not even a drop, probably a fraction of a drop of happiness that we could get from material pleasures. The soul still has the hankering for more and more, and the only way to stop this or move it around or uh, sorry, there's a word for it and I completely forgot. But the only way for us to sort of bypass this feeling is um, giving the ocean the vastness of the water. And parallel to Srimad Bhagavatam, The verse says that householders attached to material life are like a young low-class couple focused on temporary beauty. So acting like drops the small, isolated, and drops evaporate easily, as compared to, I guess, a vast ocean. And attaching to um, something, this drop becomes vulnerable to the sun. That's how the drop evaporates. The sun being the time and death. And by taking shelter of Krishna, by taking spiritual shelter, even just how this verse said, we enter the vast existence, which does not evaporate easily, and assists the soul in in experiencing bliss. Then the next flaw of material nature is asthiratva, transience. So this pleasure is only temporary. It has a beginning and an end, and also keeps on flickering. And more often than not, this anxiety that, yes, right now I'm in this moment, but 2 days later won't be, or even, sometime later won't be. So because of constantly being in this anxiety of knowing that this pleasure will end, outweighs the enjoyment of the act of being in that moment itself. And oh, which one did I open up? Sorry. Yep. And because we feel disappointment when these things happen, because yes, the expectation is there that these material pleasures would finish, but we don't expect them. I mean, the expectation is there, but even when it happens, there's still disappointment. So because of their nature being temporary, the prescription of that poetry was to wake up from the dream of permanence. And because most of these material pleasures, they are transient, they can be used as a signpost, but they shouldn't be built on it, because taking up on most of these is quite similar to building a house with focusing on the roof, but may having, fancy roof, fancy solar panels. But if the actual house is built on quicksand, then it's likely to disappear and sink, regardless of it having a very fancy roof or solar panels. And along with disappointment, because material pleasures are temporary, the other flaw is being in anxiety. And this poetry as well, which I really liked when I was reading that book, was a fat cow that grazes on lush green island pasture. For years she feeds daily, still every night she fears disaster. You've eaten well since birth. In no nutrient are you deficient. Quit fretting for tomorrow. Your lot has always been sufficient. So we always seem to be worried about what's next, or right now this is happening. Will there be something that's there that if it will still be there, if it will be, or if it will disappear by the next day. And there's no need to worry or, I guess, fret for tomorrow, because we are well fed, and no nutrient are we deficient, because Krishna has provided everything for us. So why be worried? And it is also very unlikely where, as part of Krishna's plan, it's actually impossible where these overnight pastures, or these pastures that we graze on, would completely disappear overnight. And the third one was asadhutva, impurity. This is how the pleasure is, this material enjoyment, it's tainted, it's mixed with sin, exploitation, or seeing the suffering of others. And even if it's something innocent, it still involves some level of attachment leading to future pain, or being entangled in karma. Or most of all by competition, or keeping score of who has more, creating an impure state of mind. So the prescription for this disease is slowing down and quitting the scorecard mentality. Because there's this constant haste of wanting to win in the material world, we remove the impurity of envy and find the pure, selfless love of the source. And as humans in the material world, we are obsessed with reason and status and position, which is something that keeps everyone separate from another, and also from Krishna. And if we truly want to be free, then we have to quit keeping score. And instead of going out and searching for gold, then we have to search for gold that's on the inside. That's our connection with Krishna, our connection with everyone around us. No longer having competition, but having that connection to slow down and truly understand that. Then the fourth one is dukkha mishri tattva, so mixed with misery. The same pleasure, it's not pure happiness. It is it comes because of hard labor initially. So initially hard labor, then there's this moment of happiness, then there's this fear of loss. And once we actually lose it, then there's the grief of separation. So it's like yeah, just 1 second. And because this pleasure is always mixed with pain, we often try to shut out the misery part of the equation. We just think, oh yeah, this will happen. This is the moments where we'll be happy. Yes, there'll be moments where there would be misery, there would be anxiety, there would be sadness, but it's normally just taken out of the equation because why focus on the bad? And the poetry that I really loved for this one was this: welcome every guest, no matter how grotesque. Be as hospitable to calamity as to ecstasy, to anxiety as to tranquility. Today's misery swaps your home clean, make way for tomorrow's felicity. So even depression or misery is a guide. By welcoming the dukkha, or this misery, as a guest, we can stop being surprised or in turn stop feeling disappointed, stop feeling anxious when it's taken. When I guess this has failed, and we start looking for what's the tonic nectar in this bitter sting. So this also mentions about how we often look for satisfaction in the wrong places, such as that crocodile coming onto land. It's not going to find satisfaction on the land. It would only find satisfaction when it goes to its water. So for us, every time that we try and look for satisfaction on the land, which is away from the shelter of Krishna, that's when disappointment, anxiety, misery, those pop up. And when this crocodile is weak on land, and when we are stuck with material life anxiety, we try and fix it by more material things as opposed to going back to the source of the Supreme Person. This other analogy, which I really like, is disappointments, how they are compared to pickled vinegar, and spiritual life or being in spiritual shelter is the same as tasting honey. We also need to have, I guess, the contrast of having tasted pickled vinegar to truly appreciate the taste of honey. And the last three were sangat makatva, composite or fragile. So the pleasure depends on too many external factors to enjoy, I guess, one material moment. For example, right now, with summer is happening and the last few days being very cloudy, being very grayish, cold and all, it's not really the perfect external factor to enjoy the holidays, the summer or anything. So yeah, the pleasure depends on too many external factors, health, wealth, weather, bank account wealth, and the people all around must align perfectly. And even if one piece of this entire machine or mechanism breaks, then the whole pleasure vanishes. And for this mechanism to work perfectly, it needs to be sanctioned by Krishna. And even in this fragility, the poetry that I guess matched with this one was: break a leg and the divine grants wings to soar, fall into a ditch and the divine opens a door. So even in those situations where we may be fragile, Krishna goes beyond the material and still makes everything aligned perfectly. And material pleasure, it's also compared to gutter and the rain, or gutter and the sky and the clouds. So because the gutter only knows the waste and the runoff, it could be considered very similar to, I guess, material existence. Whereas the sky is vast, free, and the source of life, the source of rain, or creation, and not something that carries it out to the drain. So being attached to this material household life is like living in the gutter. We're just moving material waste, temporary responsibilities from one place to another. Greatness comes from not taking that rain out of the drain, but rather understanding and being situated in the spiritual identity. And that's also something that we were reading in Srila Prabhupada, the Lamrita, how Srila Prabhupada was instructing his disciples uh, on being Indian, following dharma, being the true definition of religion. And the last two were paradhinatva, dependency, how this material pleasure makes us a slave, and because it's dependent on objects outside of um, us, and how we tend to lose our independence and become a beggar at the door of the senses. This was under distraction, and I think the chapter verse for this was going beyond 5 and 6. So we are dependent because we're distracted by the 5 senses plus the mind, and also with the 6 directions, which is north, south, east, west, up, down. And this dependency is the land. So it's basically said that it's 5 and 6, but if we see it's actually infinite, it's very easy to get distracted for anything in human nature, until unless one has like a razor sharp focus on just whatever they're doing. And because there's dependence and distraction, it's basically the same analogy as that crocodile being back on the land, and being powerless. So when we stop being distracted by this external dependency of the senses, we find the internal independence of the soul that is situated in the shelter of Krishna. And finally, for the last one, incompatibility, how material pleasures are incompatible. That aligns perfectly with the crocodile or fish out of the water point. Material pleasures in general, how they are very foreign. It's basically being the same as being fed on sawdust, how it doesn't fit our constitutional design. We won't be nourished with sawdust. We'll be nourished with some other nourishing foods, for example, oats. So being in tune with this material pleasure, being constantly hankering for it, it's the same way as feeding ourselves sawdust mixed with milk as opposed to oat mixed with milk. And a big part of material pleasures when it comes is pride, or going right at the top on how, on the worldly definition of success, how it's education, wealth, social standing, good family life, and how easily that makes humans or individuals very prideful, and thinking that, okay, we're the crocodile, our actual constitutional position is to stay in water, but because now that we're on land and because we're prideful for multiple of these things, we have that pride to conquer the land. And this was a very it's a very interesting poem that as I was reading it, I was also sort of parallel processing it into ego and multiple things that is mentioned multiple times. And it's floating on a strand of hay in a revolting pool of donkey's urine. The fly lifts his head like a proud captain, cluelessly steering amiss. He mistakes the strand of hay for a yacht and the puddle of urine for a sea. He thinks he's a big shot, but he's just floundering in pee. So basically, in the material world, deluded by pride and ego, our situation is very, very similar to this fly that's basically flying on this stack of hay and thinking that I'm a captain and my stack of hay is my yacht. And this donkey's urine is basically the entire ocean. And it's basically just caught up in this entire tiny territory of, just having in that pride full of itself that I'm the captain. That it's basically not realizing that it's not the ocean, it's not a fancy boat that it's the captain of, but it's just keeping itself really, really, really busy. And that's quite similar to how material strength are is the same. Even though it's away from a natural element, it's giving us the illusion or the delusion of conquering it and being in pride, but it's actually not the constitutional position of where it could be. And because the fly in that situation has made that puddle its entire world, we've also made, I guess, the land or the sewage of material nature or the gutter that drains it out, our entire world. So the ultimate prescription for pride is wanting to go back to the source, so wanting to go back to the shelter of Krishna. Just as the equator god, that crocodile out of the water, desires to go back. Our restlessness or our faults, sorry, not, yeah, 7 faults of material pleasure or all these diseases, that's basically the soul's call to go back to serve Krishna, be in the shelter of Krishna. And just with closing, I was sort of thinking this as to how adding up the numbers like 2025, 2 plus 2, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, that's equals to 9. That's a completion number. And 2026, 2 plus 2, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 6, that's 1, a new beginning number. So request everyone to please identify an area of your life where there may be an anxiety or disappointment, and how this, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, is the sting of being out of the water or trying to hold on to something that's temporary, and how we can let go of that one thing causing anxiety and replacing it with something nourishing. So thank you. These are all the points I had. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kanta.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Very nice class with
Thank you.
technical analogies. You unpack this text very nicely, especially that crocodiles out of water in the condition of our nature, isn't it? And when we connect it with the Supreme, then we are having strength. Like when crocodile is in the water, then he gets the strength. Otherwise, he has no strength. So we have given that 7 faults of material pleasure, and we are hankering for this. And how we have to come out, you have give the solution, prescription as well, and only lotus feet of Lord Krishna, so we can get out from this material world. And we are the living entities, part and parcels of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if we attached with him, then we will get strength. And you have given that so many examples of analogy, that how attachment, and for attachment how increase our material desire, and material desire brings the disease. And for drop of happiness, like we are searching and we are getting like a drop of water in the mirage. Very nicely explained.
Thank
And
you, Mataji.
and yes, by taking the shelter, we can come out from this situation. And pleasures are really temporary. And yes, when we are sick, the pleasure, and we disappointed when we came to know, yeah, it's not happening with me. Why so many tense comes, and when depression comes, and we are so worried about that. And we are really always worried in this material world if we don't take the shelter of Krishna, and we don't know anything, and we understand now what's our position, and we try to come out with the situation, but we seeing in our everyday life those who are not taking the shelter of the Lord Krishna, or their God realization or anything. They are like floating, like a bubbles, anytime they
Oh,
yeah, pop out. And yes, that's for attachment you have told about that, how impurity grows. Mm. Yes, for concoction and material desire, it will grow, and always pleasures is mixed with misery. It is not pure, and but you have given solution. We know that next day will come and tomorrow will come, but if we take the shelter, so I'm remembering that Matra Sparshas Kanteo Shitoshna Sukha Dukkha. It will come, happiness and pleasure. And by we have to go through with this one, and we have to be steady with Lord's blessings, and Lord's and with our Bhagavad Dharma. And yeah, it's nice analogies, pickled and vinegar, and we are looking for honey. We are honey. Yeah, pickled is also sour, vinegar is also sour. How it will give us the pleasure. Mm. And yes, pleasure depends upon too many factors. Is one factor is not if we go somewhere for picnic or anything for material leisure, if we found our car is not going on, our food is not there, so we feel unhappy. It's true. And yes, it all these things, dependency, in incompatibility, the material pleasure. And yeah, I like your last poem that I would like
the
to
donkey.
request. Can you repeat this one, please?
Okay, I
Yeah,
will
thank
share
you.
my screen.
Yes, please.
Uh-oh.
Make the little bit screen bigger, so yeah, then I
Yes,
can,
yes.
please.
Oh no. So that one was here.
Yes, yeah, that's
Yes.
good. Yeah.
So do you want, yeah. So
Yeah.
floating on a strand of hay in a revolting pool of donkey's urine, the fly lifts his head like a proud captain, cluelessly steering amiss. He mistakes the strand of hay for a yacht and the puddle of urine for a sea. He thinks he's a big shot, but he's just floundering in pee. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I got it. It's yeah, in our situation like this, huh? Yeah, in the
Yes.
material world. Thank you. Very
Thank
nice.
you.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So Hare Krishna, I think we should be all good. Happy New Year, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Yes, you have given that, 2026 Happy New Year. It's good as well. Thank you. Yeah, very
Thank you.
nice class. If
Thank
no
you.
comments, nothing, Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you, Mataji. Vanchakalpatarubhascha
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha कृपा सिन्धुभयेव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः अनन्तकोटि वैष्णववृन्द की जय। कृष्ण कांता देवी दासी की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। गौर प्रभुनंदे हरि हरि बोल। और वरिष्ठ असंबल डिवोटीज हरे
Hare
कृष्णा।
Krishna.
Wish you Krishna Happy New Year. Krishna conscious Happy New Year to all of you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Same to you, Mataji. Yes. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Chalo. Yeah. जय स्नान कराई है हमारी है घर के पास 8 के बजे विशेष में हाँ भक्ति में चाहिए उल्टे ही ना आए
Знаємо, градируємо.
हाँ भर के इधर करके ये रखेंगे कभी नहीं मैं अभी भर के हमारा काम है सब एक एक करेंगे ये शुरू में करेंगे तो कोई देखा Mister, Akamaru, cauliflower.
Incluso le dato mi settimana in Italia, in tua salute.
Entel pain break. Terus lihat terus selesai ya? Selesai ya?
Bruce was like for the record, we go to Bruce.
Tak terus langsung.
Le capo era di Lund.
Ram. Tiga itu berarti ya. Wek labu ya. Wek labu itu
Dia andare a
planting berapa?
dia
Oranges.
full faccia di terra. Per poter fare che Dia berikuti. Ini yang baru ini. Habis ini dia menjadi ini. That's how they take the head to the
आज नहीं दिया
అయితే والتقدير مكي من التوفيق
Yeah. Intonation.
يا
Urdi और मूंग के दाल अच्छा खला से या लिख दिया है वो एक एक किलो पैकेट करने गए हैं हाँ अरे तू जानता है उर्दी वाइट ना ये नहीं है लगा आज एक खोली थे बेटा हम बोला जने संसार जाई नहीं वही बोली से आपको हम लोग जने संसार जाई नहीं है कितना नहीं टूटा नहीं ऐसे माता जी हाँ हाँ इसके उसके बाद बिस्किट है जब आप बोला ड्राई कुछ खाना भर ड्राई कुछ नहीं रहते बिस्किट
परीक्षा वगैरह जी हाँ अच्छा है सर
कैसा कैसा होमवर्क किए लोग
उसके क्लास में
क्लास
कौन प्रभु की
बात नहीं
लोग दोनों देते हैं
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Anybody on Zoom? Alok, Prabhu, you're the host. For some reason, it's made you host. Can you please end the meeting for all? Hare Krishna. Can anybody on Zoom hear me? Alok, Prabhu, or Mataji? No, there's no response from them.